My name is Sophie Evans, and for years I thought I was living my dream life. I had married the love of my life, Ethan, after dating for almost 5 years. We had everything we wanted: a stable home, great careers, supportive families. But there was one thing missing: children. From the very beginning of our marriage, we knew we wanted to start a family. We tried. For years, every month was filled with hope, followed by heartbreak. Negative tests, doctor visits, silent tears in the bathroom. It was painful, but we held on to each other, believing that somehow, someday, it would happen. Eventually, after endless appointments and medical tests, our doctor gently suggested we consider fertility treatments. It wasn't easy to accept, but we wanted a child so badly. So we agreed. We chose a highly recommended fertility clinic. They were kind, professional, and promised to guide us through every step. The process was stressful: hormones, procedures, emotions running high. But after several rounds, we finally received the call we had prayed for. I was pregnant. Ethan cried when I told him. We both did. We spent the entire pregnancy planning the nursery, picking names, attending every appointment together. And when our son Liam was born, healthy and perfect, we both believed our nightmare was finally over. Or at least, we thought it was. For years, everything felt perfect. We raised Liam together, watched him take his first steps, say his first words, and grow into the bright, curious little boy we always dreamed of. Ethan was a great father. He was involved in everything: school, sports, bedtime stories. I couldn't have asked for more. But as Liam got older, Ethan started noticing small things. He mentioned that Liam didn't really look like him. At first, I laughed it off. Lots of kids don't look like one parent. But over time, I could see it started bothering him. Family members would make casual comments like, "Wow, he really takes after Sophie's side." Those words started to plant a seed in Ethan's mind, one that grew bigger every day. He became more distant, quieter. He would stare at Liam sometimes, lost in thought. One night after Liam went to bed, Ethan sat me down. His face was serious, but his voice was calm. He said, "Sophie, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." My heart started racing. I had no idea what was coming. Then he said the words that shattered everything. "Is Liam really mine?" I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him of course he was, that we went through the whole fertility process together. How could he even think such a thing? But Ethan wasn't convinced. He said he had been thinking about it for months, and he just couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He wasn't accusing me out of anger, but out of fear, out of doubt. Eventually, after days of fighting and long emotional conversations, he said he wanted to take a DNA test. At first, I was hurt, furious even, but in the end, I agreed. I had nothing to hide. I thought the test would finally put his mind at ease. We scheduled the test quietly, without telling anyone else. A few days later, the results came in. I remember Ethan walking into the house, holding the envelope in his shaking hands. His face was pale. He looked up at me and whispered, "Sophie, he's not my son." My entire body went cold. I couldn't understand what I was hearing. How could this be possible? I knew I had never cheated on him. This had to be a mistake. But the paper didn't lie. According to the DNA test, there was zero biological match between Ethan and Liam. That night, everything fell apart. Ethan was devastated. He accused me of lying, of cheating on him during the treatments. No matter how many times I swore to him that I had never done anything, he wouldn't believe me. His trust was completely shattered. Ethan started packing his things the same night. He couldn't even look me in the eyes. I was sitting on the couch, shaking, still trying to process what had just happened. "Ethan, please," I begged him. "You have to believe me. I never cheated on you. I would never do that. Liam is our son. There has to be another explanation." But he shook his head, his voice full of pain and anger. "Another explanation? Sophie, come on. The test says I'm not the father. How could there possibly be another explanation?" I tried to hold back my tears, but my voice cracked. Maybe the clinic made a mistake. Maybe something went wrong with the samples during the fertility treatments. We went through so many procedures. Maybe they mixed something up. Ethan froze for a second and then laughed bitterly. That's the best you can come up with? The clinic made a mistake? Sophie, do you even hear yourself? You think I'm that stupid? You probably got desperate when nothing was working and went behind my back with someone else. His words cut like knives. I couldn't breathe. Ethan, that's not what happened, I cried. But he had already made up his mind. If you want me to believe this wasn't your fault, then prove it. Show me how a clinic could make such a mistake. Otherwise, I have nothing left to say to you. And with that, he grabbed his bags and walked out the door. I sat there all night, staring at nothing. My world was collapsing, but deep down I knew. I wasn't lying. Something went wrong at that clinic, and I was going to find out exactly what happened, no matter what it took. A few days later, Ethan came back. I was surprised to see him standing at the door. His face looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He stepped inside, sat down, and took a long, deep breath. Sophie, I've been thinking. He paused, looking down for a moment before meeting my eyes again. I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have exploded the way I did. I was angry, confused, hurt. You didn't deserve that. For a moment, hope sparked inside me. Maybe finally he believed me. But before I could say anything, he continued. But Sophie, I'm still struggling. My mind keeps racing. Either the DNA lab made a mistake or the clinic did. I need proof. I can't live like this, constantly wondering if my own son is mine or not. I don't want to doubt you forever, but without answers, I know I'll never be able to move past this. I reached out, grabbing his hand, my voice trembling. Ethan, I swear on everything. I never cheated on you. There's nobody else. There never was. I love you. I love Liam. He is ours. I don't know how this happened, but I promise you, I will find out. He nodded slowly, but I could still see the doubt in his eyes. If you can prove to me this wasn't your fault, that this really was a mistake, then I'll believe you, and I'll fight for us. But until then, Sophie, I need that proof. At that moment, I knew I had no choice. I had to find out the truth. The only way to save my marriage, my family, and my son was to prove the clinic's mistake. And deep down, I felt it. Something was wrong. Someone had made a huge error, and I was going to find it. I started with the DNA clinic first. I called and spoke to one of the supervisors. I explained my situation and asked if there was any chance the DNA test results could have been wrong. The woman on the phone was polite but very clear. Our process is extremely strict, she explained. Each sample is handled by at least 3 independent technicians. We cross-check the labels before and after testing. Every step is verified multiple times. We have built-in safeguards specifically to prevent mix-ups. Mistakes like this simply don't happen. Her confidence shook me even more. I thanked her and hung up the phone. If the DNA test was correct, then the mistake had to have happened somewhere else. That only left one place: the fertility clinic. Liam was already 6 years old. That meant I would be digging into records that were almost 7 years old by now. But I didn't care. I needed answers. I contacted the fertility clinic and requested every piece of documentation they had on our case. The receptionist was hesitant at first, but after I insisted and explained that I needed the files for personal reasons, they agreed to process my request. A few days later, a thick envelope arrived at our home, filled with papers, test results, treatment schedules, consent forms, and dozens of pages of medical notes. As I opened the envelope and spread the papers across the dining table, my hands were shaking. Somewhere in these documents was the truth. I just had to find it. I spent hours going through the files. Every appointment, every medication dosage, every signed consent form was carefully laid out. At first, everything seemed in order. The treatment dates matched my memory. The doctor's notes reflected exactly what we had been told at the time. For a brief moment, I wondered if maybe I was chasing a ghost, if there really was no explanation. But then something caught my eye. Buried inside the paperwork was a small log sheet. something the clinic staff used to track samples during the IVF process. On the log, I noticed a handwritten correction. My patient ID number had been crossed out once and rewritten. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach twisting. Why was it corrected? Was it a simple clerical error or something more? I flipped through more pages and found another strange detail. On the date of the fertilization procedure, two patient ID numbers were logged right after each other. Mine, and another woman's. Her name was blacked out for privacy, but the timing was identical. Both procedures were done on the same day, within the same hour. My heart started racing. Could they have accidentally swapped the samples? The thought made me sick. This was supposed to be impossible. The clinic promised us that every precaution was taken to prevent this exact kind of mistake. And yet, here I was, staring at clear signs that something might have gone terribly wrong. I knew I couldn't stop here. If this was really what I feared, I needed undeniable proof. The next morning, I drove straight to the clinic. My hands were shaking the entire way. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't care. I needed answers, and I was done waiting. When I walked up to the front desk, I asked to speak directly with the clinic director. The receptionist tried to give me the usual polite lines. "He's busy right now. You'll need to schedule a meeting." But I wasn't leaving. I stayed calm but firm. "It's about a possible mix-up with my son's IVF procedure 6 years ago. I need to speak to him. Today." That got their attention. After waiting for almost an hour, I was finally called into a private office. The director came in, a man in his late 50s with a calm, polished tone that instantly made me feel even more uneasy. "Mrs. Evans, how can I help you today?" I placed the log sheet on his desk, pointing at the crossed-out ID. "I need to know what this is. Why was my patient ID number corrected? And why was another patient scheduled at the same time as me?" He glanced at the paper, his calm expression barely changing. "It's common for minor clerical errors to happen during intake. But I assure you, our embryology lab has multiple safeguards. There's no way samples could be mixed." I could feel my frustration boiling. "Don't give me the scripted answer," I said, my voice sharper now. "My husband took a DNA test. He is not Liam's biological father. Either you made a mistake or someone else did. And if you don't help me find out what happened, I will hire legal representation and make sure this place gets fully investigated." For the first time, his face tensed. A brief moment of hesitation. "Mrs. Evans, even if there was an internal mistake, you have to understand, mistakes like that would be catastrophic for the clinic's reputation. These records are confidential, and certain staff may no longer be employed here. It's not always easy to reconstruct cases from so many years ago." His words only confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't just some harmless paperwork error. Something had happened, and they knew it. They were trying to cover it up. I walked out of that office shaking with rage, but more determined than ever. If they were going to hide behind policies and excuses, then I needed someone who could force them to cooperate. That same afternoon, I contacted an attorney who specialized in medical malpractice. I laid everything out for him. The DNA results, the patient records, the suspicious corrections, and the director's vague answers. He listened carefully and then said the words I desperately needed to hear. "Sophie, if what you're saying is true, we can subpoena their full internal records. They won't be able to hide anything." The legal process was slow and painful. The clinic resisted at every turn, trying to delay, trying to protect themselves. But after several months of pressure, they were finally forced to release their internal investigation files. That's where everything unraveled. In the embryology lab notes, hidden from standard patient files, it was all documented. On the day of my procedure, there was a staff shortage. A newly trained lab technician had handled multiple fertilizations back to back. And in the chaos of that day, between mislabeled test tubes and improperly scanned barcodes, our embryos had been swapped. My egg had been fertilized, but not with Ethan's sperm. It had been mixed with another patient's sample. I sat in my lawyer's office, reading those words over and over, barely able to breathe. After years of pain, guilt, and suspicion, the truth was finally in front of me. I hadn't cheated. Ethan hadn't been wrong. The clinic had made the unthinkable mistake. I went home and called Ethan that night. When I showed him the documents, he sat silently for a long time. He kept rubbing his face, overwhelmed, but I saw his eyes slowly fill with relief. Sophie, you were telling the truth all along. My voice cracked. I always was. We both cried. The nightmare we had been trapped in for years was finally over. The damage was still there, but at least now we knew the truth. The lawsuit didn't take long after that. With undeniable proof in hand, the clinic quickly moved to settle. They offered a substantial financial compensation, not just for the mistake, but for the years of emotional trauma they had caused us. But no amount of money could erase what we had gone through. Ethan and I agreed. It wasn't about the money. It was about holding them accountable. The clinic's reputation was shattered. News of the lawsuit spread fast. Other former patients came forward, questioning their own treatments. Within a year, the clinic shut down completely. The director resigned quietly, and the lab technician involved lost their medical license. Justice, at least in some way, was served. As for Ethan and me, healing took time. It wasn't easy rebuilding the trust that had been so deeply damaged, even though the betrayal hadn't really been mine. We went to counseling. We had long, painful conversations, but eventually, something beautiful happened. We found our way back to each other, not as the same people we were before, but as something stronger. We learned to love again, to trust again piece by piece. And Liam, our son, he grew up never knowing the chaos that surrounded his early years. To him, Ethan was, and always would be, his father. Biology didn't matter. Love did. Looking back, I realize now, the truth can destroy you, but it can also set you free. And sometimes the family you fight for is even stronger than the one you started with. Today, our life looks very different. Ethan and I are stronger than ever. We moved to a quieter town, closer to nature, where life feels a little slower, a little more peaceful. Liam grew up into an incredible young man. Kind, smart, and compassionate. He's the kind of son any parent would be proud of. For years, we chose to keep the truth hidden from him, not out of shame, but because we wanted to protect his innocence. We didn't want him growing up feeling different or broken. But when Liam turned 16, Ethan and I sat him down and told him everything. Carefully, honestly, and with love. We explained the clinic's mistake, the confusion it caused, and most importantly, that none of it changed the fact that he was, and always would be, our son. He listened quietly, absorbing every word. And when we finished, he smiled. That same warm, easy smile that had always melted our hearts. "I already knew I was loved," he said. "That's all that matters." And he was right. Sometimes the truth isn't just something you survive, it's something that sets you free. We thought the story ended the day we received the court's confirmation. That yes, there had been a critical error at the fertility clinic, and the biological father of our son was another man entirely. Ethan's sperm sample had never been used. A clerical and procedural disaster, one that altered the course of our family forever. As part of the legal process, the biological father was informed. He was a man we'd never met, living across the country with a wife and 2 children of his own. The court had to notify him. It was his genetic material, after all. But beyond that, we chose to let it be. We didn't reach out. Not because we were angry, but because we wanted peace. For him, for us, and most of all, for Liam. We agreed this wasn't about biology. It was about love, stability, and the life we had built. Of course, we told Liam the full truth when the time was right. And we told him one more thing. That if he ever wants to know more, if he ever wants to reach out to the man whose DNA helped create him, we would stand beside him every step of the way. Not as guardians of a secret, but as parents who love him more than anything in this world. Liam simply nodded and said, "Maybe one day. But right now, I already know who my real dad is." And that was enough. For all of us. Sometimes the truth breaks everything apart, but sometimes it puts the right pieces back together, just stronger than before. Thank you for listening to my story. What is your story? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.